Good afternoon, Campbell and Crary here at Amvest Capital in New York. Welcome to the Amvest Capital Inc. live webinar with Tao Commodities Limited. Tao trades on the ASX as Tao. We hope you'll enjoy today's program. It'll also be available in replay mode. Do feel free to send in your questions. You can do so several ways. Shoot me an email or use the question section drop down on the control panel or the chat drop down, and we'll incorporate it into our Q&A session. A little bit about Amvest. It's a New York-based specialist investment management and corporate finance firm focused solely on the natural resource sector. You can hear more about us at amvestcapital.com, and replay for this will be available about an hour after we close at amvestcapital.com/webinars. This call is for informational purposes only. Please read carefully. We're pleased to have with us today Tasso Arima. Tasso making you presenter if you want to share your webcam. He's a resource company executive with a strong history of identifying company making resource projects, especially in North America. He was in fact the founder and is a director of Piedmont Lithium, PLL, and instrumental in identifying securing the Piedmont Lithium project. And if you're following Piedmont, you'll see that they struck a deal not too long ago with Tesla. So this is some of the same guys behind this company. Following the formal presentation, again, members of Amvest Capital will be asking questions of Tasso, and we look forward to your questions as well. So send them all in, and then we'll be queuing you for feedback. Please share that with us as well in the post-production. Hey Tasso, how you doing?
Really good, Campbell, really good. Thanks very much for having me here.
You got the floor, everything's working.
Perfect, thanks very much. And thanks very much everybody for joining. As Campbell said, I was the founder of Piedmont Lithium and was part of putting together that project and the team there. Prior to that, and as part of my, and who I'm part of right now is the Apollo Group. That's Ian Middlemas's investment and management group. I've been working with Ian for the last 15 years. And approximately 6 years ago, I moved to the United States, essentially on some of our projects. Now, 4.5, 5 years ago is when I started Piedmont Lithium with Lamont Leatherman and some of my other team, and where Keith came and joined us and is now CEO and running a fantastic company. Now, about a few years ago, when we started seeing Piedmont develop into a really strong company like what it is now, we started looking at other opportunities within the Southeast. We had built a really strong team around exploration, development, permitting here in the Southeast. And so we wanted to parlay those skills into that skill set into developing other projects which were part of the whole critical mineral thematic here in the US. And last year we started really focusing in on heavy mineral sands and the critical minerals that are contained within heavy mineral sands: titanium, zircon, rare earths, so on and so forth. So we were able to secure a very good project here in West Tennessee, which is what we're going to talk about today. And I'm really excited about it. Critical minerals here are used in obviously a lot of the future industries that everybody's excited about, but you also have a very deep and strong demand base from mature industries as well, which we'll talk a little bit about in this presentation. So with that, I'll start it. So we're Tao Commodities. We are only really listed or vended into Tao at the end of last year. And we've been performing quite well. We're listed on the ASX, ticker symbol TAO. So going over the disclaimers, some of the cautionary statements and forward-looking statements there as well. So us, where we're located, we call our project the Titan Project. And we're located obviously strategically on the east coast of the US. It's important because the US is actually on almost all critical minerals, it's import dependent, and there's no difference here with titanium as well. So we see this as an outstanding location, an outstanding position to be in, to be a potential critical mineral producer in the United States today and help alleviate some of that import dependence in the future. Now, we secured a really large position in the area. We continue to grow it. We're up to about 3,800 acres. We're up to our third phase drilling program, but we've only received the first phase drill program results back thus far. But what we're seeing is really exciting, potentially very large deposit with very simple geology and rich in these critical minerals. We're looking for titanium, zircon, rare earths. Now, as in a lot of the projects we've developed here in the southeastern US, we've got unbeatable, in my opinion, access to people, infrastructure like utilities and logistics, which drives both low capital and low operating costs. And we'll talk about it a little bit more about that later as well and show some pictures. And of course, I'd say it a lot, this is a critical mineral deposit, in my opinion. The titanium, the zircon, the rare earths contained in here are on the list of critical minerals and are of significant importance to our current industries here in the United States, but also our future industries. And we're seeing a lot of federal funding flowing into making sure that these supply chains are going to be secure in the future, and we feel that we can help alleviate some of those security concerns and build strong supply chains here in the US for those minerals. Like I said, our team is very strong, and we've done this before, and we hope to parlay our skills in developing projects, financing projects, putting together amazing teams, working with the community into this project as well. So where we're located, this gives you an overall map of the eastern seaboard of the US. World-class location where we are. We're just west of Nashville, between Nashville and Memphis, Tennessee. We're on the eastern seaboard. We've shown here some of the large pigment producers which require titanium dioxide or ilmenite or rutile as their feedstock, which is significant and a significant a significant import requirement right now for the US. But if we were to plot a lot of the other industries, whether it's the zircon industry or whether it's the rare earth industry, you would just fill up this map with a lot of potential operations or downstream manufacturers here. But we've got excellent location to most of all our customers within the domestic US supply chain. And also we've got outstanding access to export infrastructure as well, if we were ever wanting to supply our European or our Southeast Asian partners as well. So world-class location in my opinion, and of course the infrastructure is immense out here on the east coast of the US. Now, the minerals contained within these mineral sands deposits are critical to the development of our modern world, and that's why I guess they're called critical minerals. Whether it be one of my favorites, which is the burgeoning space exploration and development sector out here with SpaceX and Relativity Space and Blue Origin and all these companies that are needing these sort of minerals, especially titanium, through aerospace, through to, of course, another favorite of mine, electric vehicles with the rare earth needs of the magnets down there. These are critical minerals for our modern world. But not only that, it's not only this high growth market that these minerals are important about, but it's also our established industries here in the United States. The paint and pigment industry, which is, as you can imagine, is huge. The ceramics industry, the foundry industry. So we've got a very strong, deep base of demand for our critical minerals that come out of here in what we expect to come out of here in West Tennessee, whilst we also have this potential huge growth in these other industries that are driving our modern world. So we're really excited about that. Now, as I've talked about a lot before, and is similar in the sort of lithium supply chain and the battery supply chain, we are import dependent here in the US. Over time, we had our Luca operate here on the eastern seaboard of the States and shut their operations in 2016. And since then, import dependency has increased for these titanium feedstocks. This is a very large market. If I showed you a lot of the other minerals that are contained within these sort of deposits, it will be a very similar story. So there is a need for a domestic source. And we think that the McNary sand out here in West Tennessee is potentially a very large domestic source that can alleviate and supply into this supply chain for these critical minerals. The McNary sand can be up to 90 meters thick. We haven't hit it 90 meters thick anywhere on our properties, but in some of the geological text, it talks about it being up to 90 meters thick in area in thickness. But what we're targeting is the McNary sand where it comes close to surface, either outcrops or is very close to surface. And thus far, we've seen it, up to 50 meters thick. And who knows, as we move more towards the west, we may see it thicker. But this is it looks to be a very substantial potential deposit out here, and we're targeting that area where it's closer to surface. What we believe is that this should be relatively straightforward mining. The geology is relatively straightforward, and the mining should be relatively straightforward compared to, say, some other metals mining projects out there. Now, what we've secured thus far in West Tennessee is a very large position overlying the McNary sands. We've got about 3,800 acres right now. We expect to continue to add to that substantially. I believe we started with under 2,000 acres. We've hired a lot of geologists, but we've also hired an excellent community relations officer on the ground who's really helping us to build our community, positive community profile down there. And we hope over the next 6 months that we would add substantially to this position. Now, we're rapidly not only adding to the land position, but progressing the exploration on the ground so we can understand how big this deposit could be. We've completed, like I said, our phase 1 and phase 2 drill program. The phase 2 drill results are expected to come out over the next month or so. But we are already into our phase 3 drilling program as well. So we are aggressively exploring this belt while also aggressively putting together our land position in this area. And we're really excited about what we see. Now, what we've seen, which makes us excited in the phase 1 drill results, is some outstanding results come back. So thick intersections, significant mineral sands content in those. We see a zone to the bottom of the McNary sand, which is really high grade, and then in some areas we're seeing a zone where it's really high grade to the upper part of the McNary sand. We do need to do a lot more work on this. There's a lot more drilling needed, but like I said, we're rapidly doing that right now, and we expect to continue to update the market there. But right now, what we've seen thus far from our phase 1 results is making us really excited about that we're onto something special here. Now, it's not only about grade with these heavy mineral sands deposits, it's also about what minerals are contained within that heavy mineral sand. And we were really pleased with some of our initial results to see that we have substantial amount of the critical minerals, of rutile, of zircon, of the high titanium containing minerals as well, and of course of some rare earths as well in there. Now, we need, again, with this, just like our drilling and our understanding of the geology in the area, we're doing a lot more work here as well on the analysis. In the phase 3 program, we will be conducting some small bulk samples, 1 to 2 ton samples, where we will actually produce some product, and it would help to drive our understanding of our recoveries and so on and so forth within the project. It really is a big part of what we're doing in this phase 3 drilling program. So there's going to be a lot more talk about what we actually have here and what minerals we're producing, but the initial results are making us really excited about this project. So we've got something which is potentially very large, very good grade, and has critical minerals, rich critical minerals within it. It's not just that. We are also in an outstanding location. The infrastructure here is unbeatable. Most of these sort of development projects globally are in remote locations. You have to set up man camps, you have to build roads, you have to build a power plant. We don't need to do any of that. We're in a location which is rich in all the infrastructure you need to bring on a mine. So that allows us to focus primarily on the mining and the development scenario, the product processing, rather than having to focus on how we're going to fly people in and out of the operation. Now we're located close to our potential end users as well, and we're really located close, really close to barge ports for further transport, whether it be to other potential customers or out to the export market as well. Now, our logistical advantage from where we're located, I think, is paramount as well. Like I say, a lot of these critical minerals, they are imported into the United States right now. Titanium, for instance, comes from as far as, say, Western Australia. So we've got a huge logistical advantage building out this sort of deposit in the east coast of the United States, which is just a stone's throw away from our potential end users. And then, of course, I just bang on again about the infrastructure. That infrastructure really does lead to lower capital and lower operating cost, as we have seen in the studies that we've done in Piedmont. You can see some pictures there, looking over Kentucky Lake, looking over Camden, where the power is, that high voltage power is actually on our site as well. So what this does is it allows us to focus on, of course, the mining and processing, but also from a capital perspective, it allows us to not have to go huge from the start to cover large upfront infrastructure expenses like a lot of other projects will have to, which are in remote locations. So for us, we're going to be focusing this project on developing a phased approach and having high IRR style projects where we can get them into operation, get the product out there, start seeding the market with our product, developing those offtake relationships, and then from there expand over time. So it's really important. This infrastructure is a huge part of our story. And then, of course, here I show the high quality silica sand mining operation, which is just south of Camden. This is an operation which has been going for 70 years, so there is a deep talent pool of skilled individuals in the area. They understand mining. Of course, they understand titanium processing as well with the Chemours plant down the road. But for us, it's important that the community understands that mines can be a good source of high-paying and long-term jobs in this part of the world. Just as a side note, that high-quality silica is actually the McNary sand. It's something that we haven't investigated yet, but we will be investigating in the future because we obviously will have a lot of it. So moving towards what we aim to do to really add value really over the next just few months. So we've got an in here, we've put together a really outstanding team, which it all starts with the team. And then we've put together a fantastic land position. We've had those maiden drill program results, which have given us a lot of excitement and tell us that, okay, we are onto something. So now we just need to continue to build on that. That's the phase 2 drilling program results, which we want to get those out as soon as possible. Unfortunately, with the COVID shutdowns across the world, there is some delays in the labs, but we will get those out as soon as possible. And of course, then we have the third phase drilling program. In that third phase drilling program, we also have that bulk sample and metallurgical results from that. That will also give us product that we can start having real discussions with potential offtake parties. That all happens over the next 2, 3, 4 months. And then that leads into, all this work leads into our maiden JORC resource. And then, of course, together with that, the scoping study, the initial show of what this project can do. And like I said, our focus is to maintain a lower capital phased approach to this development program, which a lot of other projects actually can't do because they've got very high upfront capital costs on infrastructure, man camps, ports, rail, whatever they have to do to build an operation in remote locations. So we're really excited about putting this project together and getting these results out to the market over the next few months and showing really what we can do here with this critical mineral deposit in West Tennessee. In addition to that, we're obviously going to be pursuing, given the climate here in the US to develop critical minerals, we're obviously going to be pursuing a lot of potential strategic partnerships or potential options as well. over the next few months as well. This could be a very large project, and it gets a lot of attention. So, when we talk about the project, we should really talk about the team when you start. A lot of it is about the team. So, we've got a really strong team. You can see that in what Keith has put together in Piedmont Lithium, and we've been able to leverage off that. And so Lamont Leatherman, some ex-Iluka and Chemours personnel, Adam Cast, who was ex-head of Iluka's exploration program, Jonathan Lord, who was ex-mine geologist at Chemours operations. And then we've got our strong team out of the Apollo Group, Dominic, Greg Swan, everybody behind them as well. So we have done this before. We are confident in our abilities to do it again, to put together a strong land position, to put together and complete the exploration work through scoping, feasibility studies, permitting, get towards a position where we can attract strong partners and build out something special out here in West Tennessee. So we're really excited about doing this. We've got an excellent team. We will be adding to this team. There's a deep talent pool of people, like I said, in the region around Camden. There's a deep talent pool of people who understand mineral sands and developments like this on the east coast of the US. You will see us add to our team over the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months as we progress through this development. Our capital structure, we're sitting in a really good position right now. We've performed well in the market. I expect us to continue to perform well in the market. We've got approximately $6 million in cash, which for a project like this gives us a substantial amount for what we need to do over the next 6 months. So we're sitting in a really good position from that perspective. And we were really lucky in having Todd Hannigan, who is a friend of mine. I've known Todd for a long time, to take the helm as chairman of our company, and with that invest another $1 million on top of what is already invested into Tao Commodities. And so now we're sitting here with a strong board, really strong set of shareholders as well. We are not just managers, we are owners of this project. We are we are shareholders, so we are really about adding value to this development and doing it sustainably as well. So when you're investing in Tao, you're investing with us as well. So we're really happy about that. We own a lot of it. We have a lot of high hopes for this company. We think it could be something really special over the future. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Sure. Thank you. And those of you in the larger listening audience, please send in your questions. That would be really great. Got a few already. How would you characterize the titanium and zircon market? Opaque, easy, well-established? Some of these specialty sectors, it's not widely well known.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's not as, say, well known as, say, the coal industry, where I originally started in, or the iron ore industry, but I think it's not as opaque as, say, the battery materials market, which we have been operating in as well. It is a large market that's been around for a long time, especially around the paint and pigment market and around the ceramic market as well. So I think you look at heavy mineral sands, there's like I say, within this critical mineral suite, there's a few different minerals, rutile, zircon, ilmenites. There are price points out there, so it's not as opaque as, say, what you would have in maybe the lithium or the rare earths market, for instance.
Okay. Several mining majors drilling your ground in the 80s and 90s. Do you know why they did not follow up on the resource?
So back 30 years ago, they were drilling out this deposit as well as drilling out the deposit in Virginia. There was a large heavy mineral sand deposit back then in Virginia, and the choice was made 20 odd years ago to move to Virginia initially to develop that deposit. So that happened, and then that was done by that ended up being a Lucas operations, and then they shut that down in the sort of 2016, 2017 timeframe. Now, this area in particular, like the rest of the eastern seaboard of the US, it's private mineral ground. It's not public ground. You just can't go out and lodge an exploration license with the government. So it's tough to pick up ground here. You have to get on the ground and do the boots on the ground sort of work with the community, and then it's tough to see what sort of historic information was done here. So you actually have to again get on the ground and really do the boots on the ground sort of work. So these sort of projects over a 20-30 year time frame sort of move away as well. Historically as well, this is a finer grain material than say what they developed in Virginia. Today, with what we see happening in the mineral sands space, we're not, there's work to do around that, but we're not, it's not something that's keeping us up at night, but there's work to do around that as well. But primarily, I think similar to what we saw in Piedmont is just, you've got a private land position, you've got historic drilling that was done, and these sort of projects tend to disappear in time, and it takes a lot of work to start putting them back together again.
Do you have monazite in your tailings?
So not in the tailings. The monazite is, and this is again process work we need to do, but what we will aim to do is to separate out the titanium minerals, the zircon, the monazite, the other minerals, and pretty much sell everything that you are able to sell. There's the monazite market. The monazite is a type of rare earth element. The monazite market is more of an opaque market, but still with the way rare earths are today, there's obviously a market for that, and it is growing. We need to do some more test work around our monazite, but what we would expect is that there's potential, I believe there is potential options to even sell that within the US, and these are some of the strategic sort of discussions we're going to be having over the next 2, 3, 4 months with our project as we develop it.
Can you discuss your marketing efforts, as in of the end product and partners and buyers? Have you started it? Do you have a team together? Is it contracted out?
So it's a good question. It will be, we're at the stage of putting that team together and really understanding what sort of product we have. We understand what the general product would be, but we want to have our own samples to go with that to potential offtake parties across the spectrum: titanium, zircon, rare earths, so on and so forth. We have engaged with some of the experts in the field in the US, and I expect to bring some of them on to the team. I think we need to initially get some of those mini bulk samples done to produce a product and really characterize exactly our quality of our resource, because it's just like in coal or lithium, there's different qualities of whether it be a high titanium ilmenite or a rutile or a zircon. We need to do that before we walk into a large corporation and start saying, do you want to buy the product? From what we've already done to date, from a background check on the market, we think that there's potentially very deep markets there, and there's potentially very deep markets as well within Europe for a supply out of the US. And actually on that as well, the way we're approaching this development from the start is to try and implement the highest standards in ESG as well. So where we can, or my aim is to try and use a fully electric fleet with renewable power on the back of that, and try and completely eliminate some of those the carbon emissions out of the development out here. And I think doing that together with building a project in the States where you can track and audit what's actually happening on the ground, I think it's going to open up potential markets, or have us as a potential premium product to some of our partners out there as well.
Okay. Stu, you have some questions?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Tasso. So I guess historically, mineral sands projects haven't favoured junior miners and typically been developed by bigger companies. So how, what steps are you going to have in place to overcome that?
Well, It's a good question. I think you've got two things here. One, we are in the United States where these sort of heavy mineral sands and the critical minerals that are contained within here are of significant importance now. And two, we don't have, or we don't expect to have, those significant capital hurdles that we have to overcome in, say, some other jurisdictions, whether it be in Africa or remote parts of Australia. And that, I think, alone, just the capital hurdles, not having to build infrastructure up front to then develop a mine, you're building infrastructure more than building a mine, is gonna help substantially in allowing us to succeed. But also, like I say, and I focus on, yes, we've got a big base, industrial base here that needs pigments, needs ceramics, needs architectural glass sort of stuff. That is critical. We've got those potential customers here in the US. We've got a huge logistical advantage for that as well. But also, in addition to that, these critical minerals are part of our modern world, and there's going to be, in my opinion, like what we saw in the battery space 4 or 5 years ago when we entered and started Piedmont. In my opinion, I think there's going to be massive growth in the advancement of our modern world. That is going to continue to drive the need for these battery materials, these need for these advanced materials, these space-orientated materials. And there is backing from the government. And now, as we see with how the performances of, say, Tesla or the relativity spaces of the world, or all these SPAC transactions going on, we see a lot of capital interest in this type of projects we are developing as well. And I think that's unique as well to being located in the US as well. So I think that the lower capital, the focus by the US more on developing these critical mineral supply chains, the attention that the capital markets is giving to these sort of projects, and what I expect it to continue to give to these sort of projects over the next few years will help us to succeed.
Yeah, definitely. And then there's been a lot of press with like US government grants, Linus, etc. How might the US government grant program be applicable to you?
Yeah, it's a good question. We have done some work in DC, and that is a crucial part of what we need to do over the next 2, 3, 4 months. The DoD, for instance, is extremely interested in titanium supply chains. There's no doubt about that. Of course, they're interested in rare earth supply chains as well. You've seen outstanding work done by Linus, done by Energy Fuels, who have converted their uranium mill in Utah to process monazites. You've seen a lot of good work done, even by our group in Piedmont. So I would expect that we will immerse ourselves in those sort of discussions. We are already engaged in doing that. Unfortunately, with COVID, it makes things a little bit tougher meeting in person, as you can imagine. But we will. That is a key part of what we want to do, not just over the next 6 months, but over the next hopefully 5 years as we develop this project, get into operation, continue to phase up. Because this is going to be, I think it's crucially important for the federal government to understand that we potentially have a major source of some of these critical minerals out here in West Tennessee. We don't believe we need the government to make this, to have an economic project out here, but of course it would be great to have government support in it.
Yeah, definitely. And how much historical data can you incorporate into the maiden resource you're going to undertake this year?
I don't think we will be able to use a lot of the historical data at all. The historical data that we were able to acquire from a Nevada-based geology firm, which had done some work for a company called Altair International in the 1990s, was not complete enough to really incorporate it into the database. So what we're planning to do is a very significant, what we are doing right now is a very significant drill program. Slows us down a little bit, especially because we've got COVID and the labs take a little bit longer, but we are hopeful that we will come in on our expectations of getting a mineral resource and scoping study done. What's a little bit, what's good about these sort of deposits is the drilling can be done quicker than say what we have in North Carolina for Piedmont Lithium and what we had to do there. So, you know, we can drill a hole or 2 holes a day. And then we're really just waiting on assays and process, you know, metallurgy, flow sheets, that sort of stuff, getting all that sorted out. So unfortunately we can't use, there's not much data there because it was so old and we don't have the background to it as well. We can use it as a guide, but we have to do our own drilling in this part of the world.
Yep, fair enough. Thanks for that, Gabe.
Thanks, Stu. Thanks, Tasso. And I just wanted to ask, how do you control or own the properties?
So we typically try and go in with an option to lease. In some cases, we have to option to purchase. It's very similar to what we have in Piedmont Lithium. Actually, it's modeled over what we did in Piedmont Lithium in North Carolina. In some cases, we have actually bought some land already, some key strategic parcels which were on the market, which were, you know, relatively cheap to pick up for what we have out there. You know, in about, say, a few years' time when we're in operations, I believe it's going to be a mixture of leases and purchased land as well.
Can you just summarize sort of your commitments in terms of the property ownership, property payments to hold?
To hold it, whew, you're putting me on the spot here. It might be in the sort of $250,000 to $350,000 a year range, something like that. Putting me on the spot there.
And then, are there any work commitments, or that's it? That's it.
No, this is private land ownership. It's far different than government land ownership, way, even to what you see with the Bureau of Land Management or state lands over in the West. Here it's all private landowners. So, you know, not only does the money go directly into the community, to the hands of the landowners, also the royalty eventually will go into the hands of the landowners, or any exercise of options, land options we have goes into their hand as well. So that I think is important to say. That helps to get support again within the community. We're bringing jobs, we're bringing investment, and the community is actually getting the royalties in the community rather than go to the government. It's supposed to come back into the communities that way. So it's a little different than what typical mining companies do.
Got it. Yeah, and then in terms of the royalty regime, what does it look like in terms of percentages across the properties?
So we're around 5% in all with our private landowners, except for when we acquire land or option to purchase land. Then it's then we own it. We don't pay a royalty. There's no state mining royalties in Tennessee.
Got it. In terms of the permitting regime, what sort of regulatory bodies do you have to deal with?
So we're going through and doing high-level permit studies right now, and we're going to be outlining our permitting work from now. I think it will be similar to what we had to do in Piedmont. We will have to engage with the Army Corps of Engineers, and we'll have to engage with the state. We've already engaged with the state for the permitting of our drill holes on the ground, which is a fairly straightforward process. And then, you know, it's really just then about engaging with the state regulator and then the Army Corps of Engineers 404 and the 401 permit as well, similar to what we did in Piedmont. I've got an excellent team who handles that and who's done that a lot, and the consultants that we use we're very close with, and they're really good at what they do there. But you know, we have to do it right. We have the way heavy mineral sands deposits are, though, is that you've got active reclamation behind you, so it's quite a sustainable way of mining, I guess, compared to other sort of mining. And like I say, we want to use electric vehicle fleets and completely try and cut out our carbon emissions from the mining and processing operations by really using renewable power and electric vehicle fleets as well. So we should have an advantage there. And then again, this is where we want to build strong community relationships. We've already hired a really great, fantastic person on the ground there. She's turned out brilliant, helping to start to build our community relations on the ground there. We are going to hire a lot more people in the community coming over the next 6 months to 12 months. And we expect to, you know, make a big impact, a positive impact on the community. So that dealing with the community and being a good steward in the community is going to be a big part of that permitting program. We did it within Piedmont and in Gaston County, and we want to do it here in Benton, Henry, Carroll County, out here in West Tennessee as well. That's going to that really drives acceptance of the project and helps you to move forward as well.
For sure. Just one more question before I just back it up into something a little broader, but in terms of the grades on the project, how do they compare on like a global scale to other projects, and your product mix, is it unique among other deposits or pretty standard?
Yeah, it's a good question. So if you look at some deposits which have been financed recently on the ASX market, we are sort of higher grade than them. And then if you look at some of the operations in Australia, or if you look at operations in the Ukraine, it's similar to that. I would say in that lower high grade zone, 5, 6, 7, 8% is fantastic grade. I would say we need to do some more work on the assemblage, but it's not just about grade, it's about what sort of valuable minerals you have within that grade as well. Mm-hmm. What we're seeing looks really good, and this is why the bulk sample is so important, to confirm the product mix within that grade. And I'm looking at what we have there, I think that's going to be outstanding. When you look at 15-16% rutile, 15-16% zircon, that's great. And then you look at the other titanium minerals, it's not like a 40 or 50% TiO2 ilmenite. It's a much higher quality TiO2 ilmenite. And then of course we've got a good mix of good salting of monazite in there. So there's more work to be done there to make more of a comparison where we can have bubble charts and dollars per ton of the ground of value, so on and so forth. But I think we should impress compared to other peers, especially in that lower grade, that higher grade, lower shore zone we've outlined there in our cross section.
Got it. Okay, great. So my last question before I pass it on is just backing up in terms of how, the history of how you found this, and later, started acquiring these leases, and, why did this area stand out, I guess, or how did it come to you? And is there anyone around you in that, or any one single player around you?
So to the last question, any one single player, no, and I think that's mainly just because of COVID. It's really tough. This is not a project with private mineral ownership in the eastern part of the US. You have to be on the ground. That's pretty much what you have to do. So the way we did it, it really all started, I've got a fantastic team. I mean, I'm nothing without my team. It was, I guess, the first map that we did was Lamont Leatherman putting together a map of where there's potential titanium-bearing mineral sands in the US, and then we were able to follow it up and see that there was, from government data, that there was, some high spots throughout Mississippi, Alabama, which we are going to actually chase up on as well over time. But we could see that there was, this potential high spot out here, and then it just took a lot of work to try and find the historic information. And again, my team's really good at that. Dom Allen, who's development here, who's listed on this slide here, he did a lot in that, in putting together that historic information and getting that from some geologists that had it on floppy disks, for instance. I mean, who has floppy disks? And then plotting that, and then just doing that boots on the ground work. I was living in New York City during that time. The COVID, it was the shutdown, and so it was just me driving 15 hours to Tennessee, driving back 15 hours, getting back in the car the next week, driving 14 hours. It's just that's what it takes. It's what we do, and it's actually quite exciting, but it's a lot of work, and so to get to where we are now, I'm really proud of what my team has accomplished. So it looks great, it comes in the PowerPoint. When I tell the story, I try and keep it as simple as possible, but there's a lot of work that has gone on in the background, and there's a lot more work that will continue to go on as we develop this operation.
Great. Congratulations. Looks very exciting. Thank you. Artie?
From the first drill results, I'm wondering if you intercept the similar mineral content in terms of assemblage.
Yeah, it's a good question, Eddie. We do take a lot of chem scan samples and do the heavy mineral sinks on all the drill holes, and then chem scan samples on some of the selected drill holes. And there is some variation and change throughout the area because this is just such a big area. But generally, we're seeing consistency in that lower, high grade, lower shore zone as well. But there's a lot more work needed there. That is where, again, this phase 3 program, the drilling that we do is really, really important. And we're going to be taking these 1 to 2 ton bulk samples across different areas of the deposit to really narrow down any variability. I think Lamont actually calls them variability samples to understand, how much zircon, rutile, high Thai ilmenite, monazite we have in the south compared to 5 miles to the north. So there's more work needed there, but we're seeing generally we see some consistency that it's up at these levels in this range throughout the area, but there's more work needed there, and that's an important part of the work we need to do ahead of the scoping study as well, and ahead of talking to offtake partners as well, because we need to be able to tell them we can supply you this sort of quality over this sort of long time as well. It's a good question.
Thank you. Campbell?
Sure. We've just about reached the top of our hour. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. And this is a great first swing in this kind of format, at least with us. Let's, when we log out, we'll be queuing you for feedback. Please share your feedback. It'll get to Tasso very quickly. And you can follow Tao on the usual social media channels, and Amvest for that matter. With that, Tasso, a closing statement, and really, why should we, buy now, buy tomorrow morning?
Well, I can't tell people to buy now,
but now,
I understand.
Check it out in 3 months, kind of thing.
No, I understand. Look, we are super excited about this deposit. You don't often see something which has. You can see projects after you do it for as long as me and my team have done it before. You can see projects that have got something special about them. There's challenges with all projects, and you have to get through that. But the combination of having something which has got potentially massive scale, great grades, fantastic mineral content in a world now where there's a focus now on these critical mineral supply chains, where there's Elon Musk wants to go to Mars and is going to use a ton of titanium to do it, or we need all these electric vehicles, and so you need a hell of a lot of rare earth minerals. It's really exciting to be developing this sort of project in the US, where we're making this stuff here, and it's going to be a big part of our future and a big focus of the government and of it. So I always say, when we did coal and you're selling it to Japanese thermal power plants, that's not really a sexy business to be in, but to be able to potentially produce titanium, produce rare earths, or say, for instance, in Piedmont lithium, we're going to see it in the test that's coming out. It's similar here. We potentially have the opportunity over the next few years to start seeing what we do contribute to the advancement of our modern world, and fill that void or need for critical mineral supply here in the US. So it's super exciting. We've got a big work program ahead of us. We're going to be making a lot of announcements just over the next 6 months, getting towards that scoping study, and then I think there's a lot of potential for this project being here in the US.
All right, thank you very much, Tasso, and
thank you very much.
All right, bye everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. See ya.
Thank you.